welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast. My name is Kurt North and joining me this week is Mr. Mark Adams and Mr. Colin Jackson-Brown. We are watching or listening or even talking about Red Dwarf 10. Hello Mark, how are you?
Hello, I'm excited. New Red Dwarf. I've done 2 of these already. And this one's a special one for Colin, isn't it, Colin?
Lemons! It's good.
It is lemons. Colin, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Like Mark said, excited to watch Red Dwarf that I've not seen millions of times. And you were exactly right. I have seen these episodes 3 times.
Me too. Exactly 3.
Exactly 3. I've seen this probably at least in the 20s, 30s maybe. Colin, first up, we've had 2 episodes of Red Dwarf 10 so far. As I say, the person I spoke to was Mr. Matt Latham last week and the week before.
Oh, not him.
And I knew what he was doing. We've talked about it when we were in Birmingham. So what do you make of the first 2 episodes of Red Dwarf X, Red Dwarf 10?
Really good. I watched them both earlier again today. Particularly the first episode. Trojan there's some absolutely hilarious bits in it. The moose bit, like you guys kept going on about, that is absolutely fantastic. I was, laughing as much as I used to 27 years ago with, Red Dwarf 5 and stuff like that. It's got the quality back. We were losing a bit over the last few series.
A lot.
Yeah.
In Series 8. Worst series.
I don't know if it's worse than Back to Earth.
I think so.
Fair enough.
Does it feel different? I've done a couple of episodes now with less knowledge about these particular episodes of Red Dwarf compared to 8 series prior where I was like, I'm an expert.
Exactly.
How does it feel coming into this, Colin?
Yeah, exactly that. Because the previous ones, when I was a kid, I used to absolutely live and breathe it up to series 6. 7 and 8 was similar to this, but this one, obviously, when we started doing the podcast, we decided that me and Mark weren't going to watch them until we got to them. It is a new experience for us. There's a new series and it's great.
It feels a lot like Chucky Vision, where we get a new episode, we watch it as quickly as we can, we record and we get an episode of the podcast out as quickly as we can. It's not quite the same because obviously we're not doing it live, but it does feel much more similar to a Chucky Vision recording for me than it does for how it's been for the last 100-something episodes of Shipwrecked and Comatose.
There's a totally different way of going about doing the notes and the research for it as well while we're watching it.
I do less.
Yeah, pretty much. I do go off on tangents, but whereas previously I knew where the tangents were going to go, this one and next week's episode, where I've gone off researching things I never would have expected to be looking into, which is a lot of fun.
I think next week there's a couple of things I'm going to bring up which I found fascinating on my last watch, but we are talking about lemons.
We are.
Lemons.
Is it everything you'd wish for and more?
It's an amazing episode. It's not what I was expecting, because I was expecting it to be entirely lemon based rather than they travel back to Earth and meet Jesus, who's from Sunderland. What I liked about these episodes is Doug has looked back on what made the first 6 series great, and he's picked bits of them, and there's certain episodes that feel like bits of the series, and this to me feels like a series 6 episode, with the fact that it's location based but it's also absolutely absurd.
Speaking of that, now you've said location based, we talked about the fact that it's a live studio audience, isn't it, Mark?
I thought it sounded like canned laughter.
And he went off on a big spiel, and we're like, but it's a live audience, Mark.
I really thought it sounded like canned laughter.
That's early in the season. What I found out today when researching on Jane Caddick's book is that the production had a problem in that they didn't put in the budget for the studio audience.
Yeah.
Oof.
And they realised that late, which meant the on-location stuff had to stop. So they had to throw out quite a lot of scripts and stuff that they were going to do. They were going to go to a circus.
Okay.
They were going to do quite a few things. but they had to kibosh that and actually do a lot more stuff like you'd see in Dear Dave, which is all on the ship, just to be able to continue on. And I know we'll talk about that as we go through, but I did find it fascinating that was part of it, the fact that they just didn't have the money, and it was like, oh crap, we've not actually pegged the money for the audience.
So it's another one where they've struggled, isn't it? Series 5 is sublime. It was remarkable how good Series 5 was. And it sounds like almost history repeating itself here, where something hit the fan and they still ran with it and made something fucking great.
And it doesn't show that they were running out of budget at all. They've had 10 series of learning how to do amazing things on really low budgets quite a lot of the time. And quite a lot of the time when they get given a bigger budget, it doesn't have the best results.
Series 8.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it doesn't show at all. I know there's a similar sort of thing that we'll be talking about next week as well. I wasn't aware of that with this one. I did know that the bits where they were in India was all on a set rather than
Wait, it wasn't
film.
in India?
It wasn't actually in India, no.
Oh, I thought they'd all got a jolly.
There's one tiny bit of location filming which was outside in the studios. The woodland on Shepperton Studios lot is where the bit when they're in the woods are.
Shall we dive into this episode in more detail then?
Yes.
We're talking about Red Dwarf.
Are we?
Episode 3 of Red Dwarf 10. Lemons.
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 Lemmings.
No.
Not lemmings.
Oh,
no.
great game though.
Yeah.
I loved Lemmings.
And me.
It was released on the 18th of October, 2012.
Lemmings.
No. That was
Oh, Lemons.
Lemon! I've just realised, I've just connected the fact that Lemons, I could have got a U2 thing in, and I've only just realised that now.
You're just lacking here.
1993 Zooropa song Lemon.
And there was the big lemon that was supposed to open up and didn't always on their
Was
side.
that the one that was on the Batman film? I can only think of one U2 song. Or at least only one good one.
Hold me, throw me, kiss me, kill me. We've
Great
been through
song.
This before.
Great
I know it's
song.
a great song. It's one of my favourite U2 songs. Lemon!
It's a genuinely a U2 song called Lemon.
Yeah.
Yes. Check it out.
Who the fuck
certainly
writes a song about a lemon? It's not
U2.
hardly. You say you lemon, you taste bitter. How can you get like 2 verses out of a lemon?
Because the lyrics are, she wore lemon.
The floozy. I bet that bikini was shocking. Lemon bikini.
It's about his dead mother. But that's,
We've already gone off the rails, haven't we?
Why was his dead mother wearing a lemon bikini?
I don't know. Find out on We Dig Music.
As if a U2 track would ever make a We Dig Music episode.
We've done an entire episode on YouTube.
Oh dear. What made you do that?
'Cause
Was it just about one song?
No, it was back when we used to do a letter of the alphabet and 2 bands beginning with U.
With U2 and Ultravox.
It was
That's
U2
about
and
it.
Ultra Spank, the new metal band.
Okay.
I would absolutely listen to Ultra Spank. Never heard of them, but I like their name.
Good, I think you might like.
I mean, I might have a sub that would call me Ultra Spank.
Log in now, Ultraspank. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to log in as a username, Ultraspank.
So anyway, lemons show up.
They
Lemons
do.
What I do want to talk about, though, is Matt talked about this quite a lot in this episode as well, where they sprinkle jokes in through the course of the episode.
Right.
And we'll go with the first one, with the steak, the ribs, and the chops.
Yeah. The second time I was watching it, I wasn't paying attention properly and I completely missed that. And I'd forgotten it from the first time I watched it. So the third time I watched it, I was like, no.
Need some soy sauce.
The thing about this is that there's clearly a deliberate nod to previous continuity fuck-ups because he loses a third spleen.
Yeah. No, that's his appendix.
That's got...
It's appendix.
Sorry,
It's his
yeah.
appendix that he lost twice. Mark failed medical school.
Yeah, they have a thing about body parts. We'll get to that. Talking about the golf thing in the Medi Bay and the fact that the cat's like saying they're using all the kidney balls and things like that as well. Which
Yeah.
kind of like a bit of more of an allusion to that early episode where Lissa's having his meal.
Yes.
As well, if you remember, yeah, where he's using like the Erlenmeyer flask and things
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I think we've got to say week in, week out, Mark, about Kat's fashion.
Oh, mate. I've written cat suit love heart in my notes. But also, that type of tie, I want one, but I don't know what it's called.
Colin, did you do your research?
At Red Dwarf Pod, tweet us what that tie is called if you know what it's called. I want
It was like
one.
a big fluffy.
Like cravat kind of
Yeah,
thing?
it was.
But no, it's like a bow tie with a tail. I like it. I want one.
Bow tail.
Maybe. At Red Dwarf Pod. Help me with my fashion. But I like this scene because of the fashion and because this is Cat being very catty. Because cats will do exactly that. They'll come up to you. They'll go, food now, food. And as soon as there's food, they'll go, meow, and fuck off. It's great. It's just very catty. And I'm all about it.
We go into whatever that room is, you know, the Red Dwarf, like, sort of kind of scenes that they do.
Sort of lounge, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's got some books and he's reading again. He's revising for his robotics course, which was mentioned in last week's
Yes,
episode.
because his dad told him to do it, which is him.
Yeah.
Oh, that episode was so good. This whole series is great. Just great. I've been told that series 11 and 12 aren't great.
I'm not saying they aren't great. I personally don't think they're as good as 10.
Yeah.
I think 10's like a high bar. You've heard me say about them flipping between different kind of styles. This is him going back to basics. 11 and 12 have a little bit more of the
Experimentation sort of thing.
experimentation flourishes,
Right.
shall we
Fuck
say.
that.
So it's a bit more cohesive visually, but you'll see for yourselves when we watch Red Dwarf 11 in the near future.
Yeah.
Shakespeare, about the all expression thing, because again, that's another joke that's spread out. So you've got already the jokes that with the food and what we will find out, and we'll briefly talk about that when we get to that scene. But this thing with like Shakespeare, it's over. When will you learn? It's over, which I love. And then you get things like Cat going, it's a meal fish fit for a king.
Yes.
And stuff like that. It's quite cohesive in Red Dwarf 10. They do that a lot. They sprinkle these jokes right through the episodes.
Yeah, they do like a payoff
Yeah.
in these episodes.
The bit with the book that Lister's reading, where he's reading about Mozart, and they're talking about how Mozart wrote Twinkle Little Star. I had never heard that was written by Mozart. So I looked it up.
All right.
And it wasn't. Common sort of half-truth. He wrote the melody for Twinkle Little Star, but it was based on a French folk song called À vous dirige maman. Something like that. But yeah, it was variations on that. They're talking about him writing it when he was basically a child. He wasn't. He was in his mid-20s. And it was a practice piece for his students that he was teaching the piano to. But yeah, it's the same tune that also got used for Bar Bar Black Sheep and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Exactly the same tune. You can sing all three of those nursery rhymes over the top of each other. It's like the Batman and the Spider-Man theme tunes. You can sing them over the top of each other.
Is that coming on the Christmas special? Is that what we're doing for the Christmas
Quite
special?
possibly.
We do need a Christmas special. Start thinking now.
On January the 8th.
I was thinking about Christmas specials already. What do you think about the skullet?
They were... I think that felt like Doug Naylor thinking he'd invented that.
It's not true if that's the case.
The way Rimmer was just over-egging that bit a bit. The first person I heard of described as having a skullet was Devin Townsend, who was he was the main dude in Strapping Young Lad in the mid to late 90s. But he had a skullet up until about 2006. He shaved all his hair off wisely.
The sculliest skullet has got to be Hulk Hogan, surely.
That's a skullet. Terry Nutkins, that's a skullet.
Terry Nutkins.
Terry Nutkins, that's last
You
from the
could
past.
could you describe Bill Bailey as having a skullet, do you reckon?
I reckon so.
Yeah.
It's a scraggy skullet.
I've definitely each had a skullet at some point in the past.
Nice.
When I was in denial that it was thinning way too much at the top.
I've spoken to Bill Bailey when he's not been in the best of moods. It wasn't a nice experience.
Oh, rubbish.
I've spoken to him 3 times. He's got family near where we are, and he's come into my work, but he hasn't been for a while because the kids are now growing up, so they don't need to come to the play area. The second
right.
time, he was a bit like, ooh, okay, he's in a bit of a mood. But that's not a version on him, but he's, at that one particular moment, I don't think he was too happy.
Having
He
a
was-
bad
he was
day.
a bit,
Nobody's in a good mood all the time.
Particularly if you've got kids.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
Yeah, I think it was just like his niece or something that way he was bringing to the play area.
But the skullet thing, right? I think that he thinks he's in invented it. It was this website, I can't remember what it was called.
Urban
But
Dictionary.
it was like this... No, way before Urban Dictionary. But it was a list of the different types of mullet with photographs.
I remember
Was
that.
it History of the Mullet or something like that? Or Rate My Mullet?
I think it might have been Rate My Mullet. It was around the time as Eric Conveys an Emotion,
Yes.
which I used to love that website.
But yeah, there were loads of different types of mullet on that. And per mullet, which was a permed mullet, and fee mullet.
Stick Figure Death Theatre.
Oh, Stick Figure Death Theatre. Is that still going?
I doubt it. It's probably on the archive.org somewhere.
You can still find stuff like Weeble on YouTube.
Yeah, that was a bit later. That was about 2005, 2006.
There were various types of mullet, and this website was great. I used to go on it regularly to check if there was a new mullet type that had been added. I wish I could remember what it was called. If you can remember what it was called, at Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter.
What about Crichton being bigger than his programming and being an excellent person? What did you make to that little turnaround in joke?
Magnificent. Talking about Crichton, did you clock what the music was in the montage?
The one from the early season.
Season
3,
2, Crichton's cleaning montage that has come back. I popped when they did like the original Series 1 theme, but deep cut Crichton Series 2 cleaning montage music, and oh how happy it made me.
It's lovely when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, and it happens again later in the season as well.
It does feel like this is done with real love, affection, and reference to something that is so old and could have easily been forgotten had they not gone on to Series 3. But they've got there's some real love and affection for what they've done in the past, just dropped in occasionally in Series 10. And I'm all for it. It's made me really happy.
This is what you will see, and I don't want to colour you for season 11 and 12. This is the way to do nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
11 and 12, that's all I'll say. This is the way to do it. Just putting the theme music in, putting some underlying tunes in there. Maybe having callbacks. We talked about Pre last week, didn't we? In Cassandra. So we talked about that last week. And how Pre is very similar to Cassandra. There's various differences. It's literally a season after. But then Matt turned around and went, yeah, but it has been 14 years. Yeah,
There's a bit of Queeg in there as well, I thought, with her.
And that I'm fine with. What you might find in and I'm not spreading that over the entirety of both seasons or both series. It's a bit on the nose.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's what I'm suggesting. You already know there's a polymorph in the show.
We didn't. We very heavily speculated, but you've just confirmed what we speculated. Dickhead.
You pretty much knew it was a polymorph.
I mean, we were pretty sure.
There was no way you weren't going to get that. Put it that way. So there's some sort of polymorph thing going on.
Okay.
There you go. Breaking news.
Breaking news. That's exactly what it is, Kurt. Breaking news.
Mullets galore. Was that it?
Mullets galore.
Mullets galore. That's the website. You're right. Is it still going?
No, it's not.
Oh.
You can probably find it on the Wayback Machine, though.
It was great. I'm going to message my brother about Mullets galore. Just going to say, remember Mullets galore with no context. And if he replies, I'll report back what he says. So I'm going to do it live. I'm just going to put remember Mullets galore, lol.
He's probably used to this kind of shenanigans.
To be fair, I've put lock. I didn't even write lol right. I'm not going to correct it either. We were really professional when we first started doing this. We actually talked about Red Dwarf. I've realised over the last few episodes, I've gone properly chaotic.
That is my influence.
Possibly.
I am an agent of chaos.
And for those people who don't know the famous meme where the arms are up in the air and there's fire behind him, then that is what Colin's just replicated.
There isn't fire behind me. That would be bad. There's a giraffe.
The rejuvenation shower is Swedish. It's from IKEA. It has to be build your own. It takes 3 hours to do so. It doesn't take 3 hours to do so. There are parts that are missing. There are parts that are all over the place. They're not quite sure if it's working or not. They then try it with some socks which are teeming with life.
Yes. I really liked, in the montage bit of them building it, Cat just sort of batting at things that are hanging down in an incredibly cat-like way. That was proper Series 1 and 2 Cat.
Yeah.
It's taken me to the last watch that I did actually when I was thinking about this, because the rejuvenation shower throws them back to Earth.
Yeah.
23 AD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It makes no fucking sense at all, but it's a good episode.
We do have history of this. They did this at the first episode of Series 7, Tika to Ride, didn't they? So
Yeah.
let's just say it's a nod. It's fine. I don't care about continuity as long as I laugh, which is why I hated Series 8, because it fucked continuity, and it wasn't funny. In fact, it was offensively bad.
See, I have a canonical thing on this.
Okay.
Now that I'm off the watching it, because
A canonical
basically
justification.
yes.
Okay, go on then.
Because it basically says that it will take your genes back to a place where to rejuvenate you back to a previous kind of thing. And it does that in Entangled next week. We've got the quantum rod as well. So via quantum entanglement.
The thing that you've got in Trojan is it's a bit like the infinite improbability drive from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, isn't it? I suppose if it's working on a similar sort of theory to that, then yeah, it's just improbable that they would end up there, so they did.
Well, they could have just stayed there. Well, they can only stay there to 23 AD because they're not quite sure how it got there. There's no real push to trying to actually stay there.
Yeah.
But the main focus on that is we need to find Kachansky.
Yeah, and she's not there.
And she's not there. So he's still got this, it's like single-mindedness of staying with Kachansky. And what I did read is that the Kachansky stuff, especially in Entangled, is actually had a lot more to it because they were going to have more of an arc with Kachansky over Red Dwarf 10. Red Dwarf 6 is searching for Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf 10 is searching for Kachansky.
So why did they reduce that then?
Not entirely sure.
There were, I think from what I read, there were definitely next week's episode, there were a lot of rewrites needed. So it may be that as they were rewriting stuff, Doug changed his mind about what he was going for. And I don't think it loses anything for that. It'd be lovely if they did get Chloe Annette back, because she's brilliant, as we've often said. But yeah, when they mentioned that in this episode, I did wonder whether I'd missed something in the previous episodes, but rewatching it today, no, it's mentioned occasionally.
It's pretty vague.
Yeah, but it has always been part of Lister's motivation. Finding Kachansky just as much as getting back home to Earth. Both of them are just as important.
They do end up in 23 AD. Kat has a really interesting conversation at that point, doesn't it? Why is it always Earth? And I think that's quite meta.
It's almost a Doctor Who reference. Doctor Who always ends up with the characters on Earth, doesn't it?
Why do we always end up in a quarry?
The remote control isn't working, and they've got to make a battery. It has been pointed out that they could have made a battery in England. We're just going to go with the fact that Rimmer doesn't have the knowledge other than lemons or potatoes.
I was going to suggest that they use the battery from Rimmer's light bee.
If it's the wrong type, though, you know.
Yeah, if it's not got a proper transformer.
But also, how are they powering Rimmer for 6 months if he's not on Red Dwarf? There must be a battery somewhere.
I was going to say stop looking for plot holes, but then most of my notes
I don't
have
care
gone.
that there's plot holes, but this is a fundamental plot hole.
Yeah.
And the episode is named after it. They could literally pull out Crichton's wires and jimmy the battery from the light bee, or a battery in Crichton to make it work.
Well, as I say, you would not necessarily potentially need a transformer to be able to make it work.
Also, at that time,
and it would overload it as well.
I looked at the history of lemons, and they were quite common in Italy in 200 BC. That would have saved them about 3,000 miles of walking if they'd just gone to Italy rather than all the way to India.
But if they had gone to Italy, we wouldn't have got the Red Dwarf theme on sitar, so I don't care about that.
Very good point. And they wouldn't have met Indira Joshi, sorry.
Well, that's genocide. I think that's okay. We'll get there.
They travelled by map like the Muppets
It was so
do.
cheap as well. It felt like, who do you think you are kidding? It was just crap, and I loved it.
But it also reminded me of Asterix because it got Gaul and stuff like that on there.
Yes. Even if Craig Charles was a crap Asterix.
Well, they get to India, and they do meet her, she starts talking about things like, and then they burned, and then they drowned, and then they sacrificed, and then they did this, and then they did that, which was amazing. And it's like, what would you like? Some lemons. How many would you like? 8.
That scene is fantastic. Indira Joshi is brilliant in it. She's best known probably in the UK as the Nan from the Kumars at number 42. More importantly, she's the Secretary General of the UN in Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Is she?
The bit at the end where Superman goes into the UN and he's saying, I'm going to take all your nuclear weapons and
throw them into
the sun.
Which is probably the hardest thing to ever do.
But she's the Secretary General of the UN and she's sitting right behind him and she's the first person to cheer. The bit where her character was talking about the 3 different gods that her family had been sacrificed to in Albion, Tutatis, Esus and Tyrannus are the 3 gods that she mentioned. And they were, Tutatis was the god of the tribes. So each individual tribe basically had their own Tutatis. And sacrifices to Tutatis, they were drowned. Esus was the god of rivers. So people were either hung or tied to a tree and flogged to death. And Tyrannus was the god of thunder. So possibly Gene Simmons from Kiss. And they were burned, possibly by Kiss's pyrotechnics on stage.
I just enjoyed the stuff about bags. I loved everything to do with the bags. I've used to play like Dungeons and Dragons style role-playing games, and we were playing this ultra-realistic kind of snooty version of D&D called Ars Magica. And I wasn't allowed either a bookshelf because they hadn't been invented, so I had to have chests. And I wasn't allowed a bag because they hadn't been invented. And apparently scholars used to carry their books in hoods rather than bags.
They did have bags at this time, 23 AD.
See, this is why you don't want Colin on the podcast, because he researches absolutely everything.
Sod off. You ruined it.
They exist.
Jesus hugging his bag was the best thing.
Yeah, they existed in ancient Egypt and quite close to Jesus. Judas Iscariot was known to carry a pouch, which is basically a bag. And that's mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, Judas was a bellend. So
Judas Priest, a fucking ace.
Judas Priests are good, yeah.
You listen to something other than you two. Who are you and what have you done with Kurt?
Definitely admitted to listening to Coldplay before. And
that doesn't surprise me.
Other such experimental, extreme music.
I was listening to Lana Del Rey the other day.
Bit out there for you, yeah, fair.
Yeah, it's a bit out there, yeah.
Good.
A bit of Jewel.
I bet you listened to Cast when you were growing up as well.
No, I wasn't a Cast person.
Fucking Cast. They were terrible.
Yeah, Cast was shit.
Dodgy were great, though. If it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me.
Credit myself as the catalyst for Dodgy reforming.
Thanks.
Their guitarist was in a band called Mass, who were brilliant. They got a track called Hey Gravity that's awesome. I went to see him play at the Jug of Ale in Birmingham years ago, and which has to be years ago. It's been closed for nearly 20 years. But it was the first time that the other 2 members of Dodgy had been to see Mass. And it was the first time the 3 of them were all in the same room together. And about 3 years later, they did. So I put that in their heads.
You incepted that into their heads.
Wait, no, fuck you, Colin.
Dodgy race.
They're bloody awful.
Someone I used to work with's family member used to be in Cooler Shaker.
Was it Crispy and Mills? Was it Crispy and
Mills?
Mills?
I've seen Crispy and Mills when he supported Robbie.
Of course, he went to see Robbie Williams.
Can we just change his name to Crispian? I want to reclaim the swastika Mills.
Well, that's why they failed miserably, wasn't it? They were doing great, and he was like, I love swastikas.
No, they were still massive at that time. It didn't harm their career that much, or anywhere near as much as it fucking should have.
And then I met Orison at a Robbie Williams gig as well.
I don't know who that is, so I'm going to assume it's Mark Morrison.
Oh, do you mean Orson?
Orson, sorry.
Right, yeah, I've met Orson.
So if you really want to know my music history, one of my first bands that I went to see live was Wasp.
Awesome.
Okay. I'll give you that.
Pictures of naked ladies.
Okay, fair play.
I met
you
Charlie
actually
Chainsaw.
like a band that isn't fucking awful.
I like Charlie Chainsaw. Anyway, speaking of Jesus, 3 weeks he got some nails, and
you clocked that Jesus got the nails, right?
No.
That's got to be deliberate, right?
Might need these later.
That's got to be deliberate, surely. That can't just be by chance.
He was just hanging around with them.
They start talking about luxury and purple crushing and of seashells and stuff, right?
Are you going to disprove that as well, Colin?
No. That's
No.
true.
I'm going to say something, though, that Carlisle was apparently the centre of the Roman Empire.
Was it the centre of the Roman Empire, or was that Rome? It was
well.
not the Carlislean Empire, was it?
No, but hang on. So they reckon that because they found a dig, which is by our cricket club, because the cricket club's by the river and in the city centre, which is flooded in 2005. Yeah. They then wanted to build the cricket club on a higher ground, but to do that, they had to do an archaeological dig to make sure there's nothing there. They've since found 2 statues in there in a bathhouse, which is rather unique style bathhouse, and it has the imperial emblems on it. So they reckon that the emperor at the time was coming to Carlisle and was actually basing the imperial stamp, and they found crushed. They're not even sure how it's been created, but it's like a purple colour.
Yeah.
Only the emperors are allowed to have. So at one point, because of the way that the emperors moved around and they had to be classed as where they was the centre of the empire.
Right.
That the Roman Empire was.
But it can't have been the centre because they never got passed into Scotland, so it can only ever have been the top.
It depends on how you classify centre, though, isn't it? London is not the centre of the UK,
no,
is it?
Birmingham is.
It's the southwest of England.
Meriden is. And actually, no, that's just England. The Scottish are probably getting very annoyed with me saying that.
Yeah, and when people say that the north of England is just north of Birmingham, I'm like, there's still another 400 miles left, lads.
Yep.
There is things other than that, and I know that we put in our Discord recently where it was like, the whole of the UK is underwater because of all the flooding, and you look at the map, and it's basically most of England, a little bit of Wales, none of Scotland, and then I know our colleague on the network was saying Scottish independence, and then I went, the northwest of England hasn't even been mentioned, so I'm Mr. Lonely again because nobody even thinks about me.
I mean, it doesn't really exist, does it?
We were the centre of the Roman Empire at one point, so
that was Rome.
I'm sticking to that.
Yes.
Would you have liked to have joined Jesus during his 18 to 30 years?
Maybe some of the time, but when he was in India and stuff like that, it'd be too hot. I'd get sunburnt. I'm far too ginger for that heat. I'd have to wear an asbestos suit rather than just a hat. I'm melting heat.
I like the warm.
I don't like the warm.
I wear a hat.
That's why you live in Carlisle. So anyway, Judas Didymus turns up.
Judas Didymus, James's twin, Didymus. What do we think to this? What do we think to the Church of Judas and women?
So, okay, other than it contradicting the Seventh-day Advent Hoppists bit, it's a bit like Lister having his appendix out twice. I liked it. It was a nice bit of Red Dwarf lore. So we'd got a little more about why Arnold was called Arnold Judas Rimmer, although their entire church was based on a failure of information, because Judas Didymus isn't Judas Iscariot. That's 2 different people. Jude the Apostle was one of the other disciples of Jesus, who was a different person. If you go on Wikipedia and search Jude Didymus, it comes up with the Jude the Apostle page, and the first thing it says is not to be confused with
Wait
Judas
a minute,
Iscariot.
is Jude short for Judas, as in Hey Jude, and as in Jude Law? Is Jude Law called Judas Law?
So Hey Jude
That's his son.
is Julian
Oh,
Lennon.
I did know that, and it just sounded better.
It was McCartney wrote it for Julian Lennon because John Lennon was being a cunt.
Yeah.
As
Then
he
obviously
often
Jude
was.
is short for Judy. Is Jude Law called Judas? This is the important question.
I don't think many people tend to be called Judas these days. It's quite an archaic name.
David Jude Hayworth Law. So Jude isn't short for Judas. In fact, his name's David.
It's short for David.
No, his middle
That's just
name's
weird.
Jude. Oh, he's older than I thought he was. Still fit.
Mark, do you want to do the Holiday as a Christmas special by any chance?
What
The
holiday?
film, The Holiday, with Jude in it.
I mean, he's fit. If we can't think of anything better, why not?
Do you like the?
What do we think to submissive Crichton? Crichton in Red Dwarf 10 and most of Red Dwarf, his mannerisms are incredible. And when he says, "Was the gladiator like to join?" He just does this puppy dog thing. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I adore it. I think
I'm a man of peace. Then you shall sit with me.
I also really like Rimmer's cynicism about getting Jesus' autograph. I think he's so very Rimmer. That's what's been really, really good about all four of the characters. It's not just that the writing knows the characters, the actors know the characters, and they all just mesh and get it right, and it's just fucking Red Dwarf, and makes me happy.
Yeah, they've known these characters for, like, at this point, 35 years, something like that, 36, 37. You know, they've inhabited these characters for most of their lives by this point. And the writing is only part of it, isn't it? It's you know, the actors themselves are what really bring the characters to life, which is why everyone's really fucking nervous about this thing that Rob Grant's talking about with young versions of the characters played by other people. It could be brilliant. I really hope it is. But that's why everyone's nervous
Zachary
about it.
Quinto did a very good Spock. Who knows? But
That is
fear,
a very fair point.
Agree. Full on fear.
Let's talk about, just before we go into The Last Supper, because that effect of that scene there, the 23 AD, well, with Kat.
Oh,
Let's
wonderful.
see, shall
that.
we? And they hang on that for some time.
23 AD. How old would he be?
Wonderful.
Yes. Excellent bit of almost Stuart Lee level of dragging it out
Oh, it was
longer
wonderful.
than it should be, and that making it funnier.
We talked about religion and Red Dwarf in the past. Obviously, the undertone here is certainly interesting.
Is heavy, isn't it? I mean, to me, the Church of Judas sounds just as ridiculous as the Church of whatever the fuck but it just feels like they've had a poke, they've had a poke, they've had a poke, now we'll get a fucking spear. That's what this episode feels like.
I think they're still fairly respectful.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it's offensive unless you're a bit of a lunatic, really.
There is a comment, isn't there, I think, on think the Tongue-Tied website, where they talk about the fact there was something else that they were going to do, and actually Doug pulled it back because he thought it was a bit too much. So he's obviously he's obviously aware of that line he doesn't want to cross, but he will succinctly do that. And the ones that I played for laughs, like sort of the Mersey, you know, when I travelled and across the Mersey, it was like, well, there's plenty of prams in there.
There was a bridge.
No, there was a bridge. And because at that point, we're still thinking it's Jesus of Nazareth, which is great.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good.
Well, he says, I visited Albion, obviously extensively, because he's picked up
Brilliant.
that Sunderland accent, and so is his uncle.
And then his uncle, he was just still speeching, though. He was still speeching. So they run away, and they have to make the battery. We have Crichton's exceptional explanation. I don't think I've really paid attention to what he actually says.
Crichton's science lesson, isn't it? It's brilliant. It's educational.
Yeah, he has to have had the text on that table in front of him. There was too many cuts. There was bits where he looked like he was there, but I'm sure there must have been some little notes in front of him.
Well, I think Robert Llewellyn's pretty science-based, isn't he? So it wouldn't surprise me if he knew that and understood the theory. It's not particularly advanced physics. It's the kind of thing that you could do as an experiment at school.
Well, isn't that the inspiration of the lemon battery anyway? The school experiments. I'm sure I did something
Exactly,
like that.
yeah.
I was terrible at science.
I was really good at physics. Not quite as good as chemistry or biology, but physics I was really good at GCSE, despite the fact that, or possibly even because of the fact that I spent most of the time doing my own experiments in the physics lab, which was setting fire to different things with the Bunsen burners, using various different things. We had the electricity power packs, which were basically a step-down transformer. And with the help of our physics teacher, we learnt how to step them back up again. So you could wire two of these step-down transformers together so that it took the mains electricity all the way down and then back up again to mains electricity level. And then what we used to do is we used to sharpen two ends of a pencil and connect it with crocodile clips and see how long it took until it burst into flames, which was normally about 3 seconds. But this same teacher, Mr. Pullen, who's an absolute legend, we used to go in really early on April the 1st every year so that we could wire the Van de Graaff generator up to the metal door handle and then wait for people to come in and get electric shocks off it.
Fucking hell, Colin.
But yeah, and then I went to do physics at A-level and realised it was maths and gave it up after a month.
The only thing I remember about science is cutting up frogs and lighting magnesium.
I don't think we ever cut up any frogs or anything. I wonder if that
We did
changed.
a flower and then we did frogs.
I wonder if they changed that within the 4 years.
Maybe.
Perhaps you were one of the last ones to do it. I know they still do it in America all the time because it's always in American films.
But apparently you can't light magnesium anymore because it's too bright and it could have damaged kids' eyes or something.
It's also really difficult to light it if you nick a strip of magnesium ribbon from the science class and then just try and light it with a lighter, because that's what we did. Didn't work. We couldn't get the fucking thing to light.
It's political correctness gone mad that you can't have magnesium in science anymore. Oh, no, wait. It's health and safety to protect children, you fucking idiots. Why do you say it's political correctness when it's actually health and safety? That's one of my bugbears that stupid people do.
Can't even throw a toaster in a bath these days, in case the gays get offended.
Oh, I just want to kill idiots.
Well, everyone's got to have a hobby.
Anyway, let's move on. Anything else other than the Crichton's explanation? Cat's no longer the dumbest in the room.
Yeah. Lister's shirt in this scene.
Right.
He's got his Believe in the Ruins shirt, which he last wore in DNA. So it's the same costume has been hanging around for 21 years, because that was 1991.
That's a lot of years.
It is. I really loved that bit of continuity, because I was looking at it going, that's a really weird shirt. That's really distinctive. So I looked into it. You don't see it that much in DNA. He's wearing that shirt underneath his jacket, so you occasionally...
Is that when he was wearing it as a
the chicken isn't wearing the shirt, but it's later on in the episode. I rewatched the episode to find it. But yeah, Believe in the Ruins was an EP by an obscure early 80s Californian oi punk band called Kilroy. They're sort of anarchist punk kind of thing. It's all right. It's not a bad EP. I'd have listened to it. Unlike a lot of the oi scene, they don't appear to be massive racists, so that's good. But then underneath the Believe in the Ruins patch, there's a picture of Joseph Stalin, which is really bizarre. And it's like, why has he got a picture of Joseph Stalin? But that was there in DNA as well, because when I went back to have a look, that was there. But I don't remember anybody ever noticing it or remarking. I searched on it. I did loads of trying to see if anybody had pointed out that for some reason Lister had got a shirt with a patch of Joseph Stalin on it. Nobody appears to have mentioned it on the internet anywhere. So it might be that I'm the first person that's ever noticed it. But it's a bit strange.
Maybe you're the first. Maybe in 3 years you'll have got Red Dwarf cancelled.
Maybe people have mentioned it on the internet, but somebody has done some Stalinist revisionism, and has got rid of
maybe
all of the mentions of it anywhere. So if this episode disappears, maybe that's what happens.
You mean like Crikey TV
Yes.
didn't disappear from the BBC iPlayer? Because cancel culture is just bollocks. Nobody gets fucking cancelled. In fact, if you are in inverted commas cancelled, you seem to be even fucking louder than you ever were. Oh, a little bit of politics.
No,
I'm in a funny mood.
Anyway.
Maybe I should stop drinking beer. I'm not going to stop drinking beer.
Cat and the nail file. We're back on Red Dwarf. We mentioned it at the top of the hour, but Cat with his nail file, and he's fingering around, and they start talking about the fact that Jesus has got this demon, and they think he's got a kidney stone, which, as time of recording, my friend has got one. I haven't seen him for a few weeks. He's waiting for an operation, so he's out of action.
I had one about 4 years ago, and it fucking hurt.
Compare it to something that I might have had.
By a doctor that it hurts more than childbirth. Which was a brilliant bit to go, Helen, it hurts more than that.
Was it a man that told you that?
No, it was
though?
a woman who had done both. But yeah, no, I went to hospital with it and was waiting in A&E overnight, and it was still queuing up at 5 o'clock in the morning when I'd been there since 10 o'clock. And by that point, I was fine. So I ended up discharging myself and going home and didn't come back. Because they just disintegrate sometimes, which is good.
Yeah, my friend is like, it's that big, it has to stay in where it's at. It might have to be lasered and all kinds. So he's...
yeah, they like ultrasound it to disintegrate it sometimes.
So he's...
How does one acquire one of these items?
I mean, you might be able to get them on eBay.
No, I mean, how do you get it in you?
I have no idea.
It's like a build-up of your, your diet and stuff, isn't it?
That's fucking terrible. I should have 10.
Yeah, but you're a right skinny bastard and I'm a right fat bastard. So, you know...
I prefer the term svelte, actually, Colin.
Isn't that just Swedish for skinny? And this is the first of two. This is normally what the second of two sounds like.
Crichton reveals something, and this goes to a lot of things. One, the fact that Crichton, and Matt mentioned this over the last 2 episodes, that the fact that Rimmer seems to have his authority back. He seems to be the one that's running things. Crichton goes, Rimmer said it was fine. And then you've got the whole element of I've done it loads of times. I'm not relying on the Medibot. The Medibot's blah, 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 blah. It's like all the other operations I've done on you. What other operations? Well, with all the other things that I've done. And, like the stuff on B-Deck. And the way he rhymes it off.
It's very Red Dwarf again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very rare. And just having Cat there, the obvious downside is that this happened about 7 months ago. So he's got a very good memory to actually recall himself back to that moment. Because there's about 7 months has happened since he ate that steak, or he's eating that spine. But at the same time, you still would have that reflex of like,
I didn't have that reflex.
Wow, no,
I was like, cool, cannibalism.
Which you were talking about Tika to Ride, because that's again similar, isn't it? That's
well, there was a cat eating people here.
I'd rather eat people than cats. If I die and my cat needs to eat,
This is the thing. It's not technically cannibalism if cat eats Lister's organs. But I did Google to find out if Lister had eaten them himself, would it count as cannibalism? So there's a thing called auto-cannibalism or autosarcophagy, which is basically self-cannibalism. But generally, only the consumption of flesh, including organ meat such as heart or liver, by an individual of the same species is considered cannibalism. So
Gillian Anderson not eating her own leg wouldn't count.
No, it would. That would be auto-cannibalism.
Okay, because that's what happens in Hannibal, I think, in season 3 of Hannibal.
Oh, I've not got that far yet. Fucking spoilers.
Damn it.
I'm only on season 2. Series 1 was really good. I liked it.
I didn't, I had no idea that you were watching it, mate.
Yeah, I know. We're really late.
It was only like 10 years ago when it was out. Another continuity, no anaesthetic.
True. Because Cat's got it all.
Cat's got it all. And then Rimmer's...
You gotta plan ahead.
You've got to think ahead. And then Rimmer's pure pride in, I'll hold it.
I have in my notes, just on its own, the only notes here, there's 3 words, holding Jesus' knob.
Brilliant. I'd hold that Jesus' knob. He was hot. Do you know what Jesus said about gay people?
Nothing.
Absolutely fucking nothing.
Yeah. He didn't believe that they existed.
Ugh. He just didn't care because no one should.
Why'd you keep bringing it up then?
I would for that Jesus, but
What about the Jesus in Walking Dead?
Yeah, him too.
They leave the books out for Jesus to read, and this causes a bit of...
That's not wise.
...conflict for our friend Jesus. He doesn't like what he reads in the books about what happens in religion.
I did really like the bit where Crichton discovers that he's woken up and goes, he hath risen.
I think it's fascinating, isn't it? Philosophically, Jesus probably wouldn't like what
Of course he fucking wouldn't.
Christianity became.
Yeah.
Because he was a man of peace.
But canonically, he didn't at the fucking time. In the Bible, he went in and smashed up all the temples and shit, didn't he? because he didn't like what the priests and stuff were doing.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the fucking same thing that, particularly in America, all the mega churches and stuff are doing. Stop it, you fucking capitalist bellends.
With their white Jesuses that come from America, not Palestine.
But the thing is, you would give up Christianity for Wallace and Gromit. You would give up Wallace and Gromit, wouldn't you?
I do like Wallace and Gromit. It's a good point. And I like Christmas.
I also like
Give
Wallace
me-
and Gromit.
Nah, not
And
like
mulled
that.
wine.
Pigs in blankets, though,
Give me-
which isn't fucking sausage rolls for any Americans listening. They think pigs in blankets are what we call sausage rolls, which is just weird. Sausage, bacon round it.
I tell you what, they were quite. If you have seen our sausage rolls, they'd be quite girthy
That
pigs and blankets.
size sausage with that size bacon round it, yeah, like Greg's sausage roll size. Have that with bacon instead of. I want that now. Hungry.
Americans have literally everything with bacon.
But in this instance, they don't. It's just sausage rolls. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
They get it wrong.
I'd have thought they'd have had bacon with their bacon, to be honest.
I do like bacon. Bacon's good.
Jesus goes back down and he starts talking about the commandments.
Yes.
Thou shalt not kill. And it's like, no, I think that's genocide. It's okay.
Honestly.
It's just like such a dig. And it was like,
Honestly,
oh,
that line.
beautiful.
I popped so much I had to pause it. I was like, oofed with your accuracy. Oh, magnificent. Magnificent. I think what was really good about this episode, whilst, yes, it was very much attacking Christianity, it did it in a way that, I don't know, seems almost less kind of jabby than they've done in the past, because it was blatant. I think this is less blatant. I don't know. I think this was less offensive than some of the stuff they've done in the past, and I can't quite put my finger on why. I think it's because it's so deliberately so, rather than just in an episode that's not about Christianity, just having a random spike at it. Whereas this is obviously a satire of Christianity.
It is, but even if you look at it next to something like Life of Brian, I think it's more respectful than that. And, I like both.
Yeah.
I think that my wife's dad was a Methodist minister. I think he would have enjoyed it. I think he would have liked it and approved. So, yeah. Also, it's got the line, don't think just because I'm a man of peace, I can't punch your teeth out, which is a fantastic line.
Well, that goes
I
very
don't want to
well
hit you,
with-
Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't want to hit you, Jesus.
I mean, that goes very well with Lister calling Jesus a knob as well, which amused me immensely.
Yeah. And then it goes back, because they've done this a lot in Red Dwarf, where it goes, which means that I'm okay,
Yeah.
because it feels like I'm a knob, and and that means that you're just an everyman like me. And I like that. And that's stuff that they've done before. That's pretty much it, really, isn't it? Because you get the whole reveal
Jesus of
that it's
Caesarea.
not who we think it is. Rachel the fornicator, and
And the Jesus and Judas gag at the end, confirming
Yes.
that Rimmer's church was right, was good. And you do occasionally get a bad last gag with
Yeah.
Red Dwarf, whereas this one was a fucking banger.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And he gets his bags as well. So there's a happy story there.
Honestly,
He gets to sell his
Jesus
bags.
loves a bag as much as my cat Pasha. Pasha loves a bag. You put a bag on the floor, that ain't your bag no more. Belongs to Pash.
Yeah, unless you've got anything else, that's basically the end of the episode, because there's not much more that I've got there.
I remember saying how much I loved the last two episodes when we were with Matt.
Yeah.
And I loved this, and spoilers, I love the next one as well. There isn't
Yeah,
a bum
it's-
episode in the entire series. It's great. It's fucking great.
Back to the quality that we love it for.
Where would you place it? Would you say that we're 3 episodes in now? There has been a bit of recency bias, obviously in yourselves, because obviously you've got a bit of time. You'll have a bit of time to let this settle in. But I think, even though I've obviously known this for 10 years, for 12 years, for whatever it is, and almost 14 years, 12 years it'll be, won't it? 2012. I still think it's up there, and I know that other people don't particularly, but
Definitely.
but you definitely think it's of that standard of maybe Series 5, Series 6.
It's not better than 5 or 6, but it could be, with a little bit of time, a little bit of chill, a little bit of contemplation, it could certainly be my third, fourth, fifth. I think no lower than fifth favourite series so far.
Yeah, I would say.
Cool.
Yeah, maybe fourth or fifth favourite, I think. Absolute standout bits in this that are up there with the best bits all time of Red Dwarf.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I think so too.
And I'm glad we're really positive about it, because as I say, there's a bit of a mixed response and post-recency bias and things like that.
I was just about to say, with recency bias, we didn't get that with Series 8, and we didn't get that with Back to Earth. When we watched them recently, we weren't going, no, it's all right. We're going, it's fucking wank, apart from a few little bits. But in general, this is absolute return to form. So pleased to have it back 12 years ago.
Massively pleasant surprise. And honestly, as I was expecting it to just be kind of okay. And from what you've said, it looks like Series 11 and 12 are going to be okay, but not anything as good as this.
Let's sort that out when we get there.
What?
Let's sort that out in the dub.
In the dub.
So we are going to be doing Entangled next week. Where can people find you online, Mr. Brown? Mr. Jackson-Brown.
So I've got two other podcasts, We Dig Music and Free With This Month's Issue, both very based on music-y type things, because that's what I dig. You can find both of those on wedigpodcasts.com or by searching them in a podcast app like you've done for this.
Mr. Adams.
Got a podcast about Chucky and Killer Dolls that's got more episodes than you would think for a podcast about Chucky and Killer Dolls. It's called Chucky Vision because I'm an idiot who literally started a podcast because of a Chuckle Vision pun. And it's at Chucky Vision on Twitter. And search for it like you would for any podcast if you've got half a brain on the podcast provider you're using for this. In it.
You can find me on Linktree.
Oh, because they're really useful, aren't they? Linktrees.
They are really, really useful Linktrees. Linktree/rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. And you can also find my brand new venture, The Magic Box Pod, which is a show all about Lost. Its 20th anniversary is this year. And you can find that at Linktree/The Magic Box Pod. And there's Patreon, there's videos, there's commentaries, there's episodes, which are going live in September, but there will be early access on the Patreon, and there will be other videos, and there'll also be monthly episode until September. So please come and join me on that, while Mark is getting attacked by Pasha, his own cat. Thank you for joining us as usual, and until next week, remember, as always,
Lemons!
You know what's tricky sometimes? Predicting who is going to win at the Oscars. You have to get yourself to a cinema to see all of the movies, or at least have all the streaming services so you don't miss a single one. You have to pay attention to all the precursor awards to see who is winning so far. The Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, they're the pretty obvious ones. But don't forget the Critics' Choice Awards, or the SAGs, or the DGAs, or the PGAs, or the Eddies, or the Gothams, or the AFI Top 10, or the National Board of Review. Ugh, exhausting, right? Or you can just join me for Academy Watch on the We Made This podcast network. I'm the host, Bo Nicholson, and I've been reading the trends, keeping the stats, and watching as many of the films as humanly possible, and I can tell you who the big players will be on the big night. Me and a guest will also be dissecting one of the key movies in the award season each episode. This year, it looks like Oppenheimer's to lose in several categories, including Best Picture. But can a mid-year release maintain momentum right to a Best Picture victory 2 years in a row? Or can Poor Things or The Holdovers stage a late-season surge to steal the prize? Is it too early to discount the cultural phenomenon that was Barbie? Or Martin Scorsese's late-career masterpiece, Killers of the Flower Moon? And what about the critical darling Past Lives? Whatever the movements are across the various precursors and throughout the season, you'll have the best available information if you subscribe to Academy Watch, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.